Welcome to Retail's Most Wanted, the podcast that examines the latest issues related to organized retail crime and how retailers and policymakers are fighting back against today's organized crime syndicates. I'm your host, Marty Carpenter, and joining us today is Dr. Reed Hayes, Director of the Loss Prevention Research Council and a leading expert in retail crime prevention. With Washington, D.C. recently declaring a crime emergency and high-profile cases where surveillance footage has played a crucial role in tracking down suspects, we're going to discuss how technology is changing the game in crime prevention, and we're going to do that right after this word from our sponsor. Retail's Most Wanted is brought to you in partnership with LVT, securing physical environments through intelligent automation. Learn more at lvt.com. That's lvt.com. Dr. Reed Hayes, welcome to Retail's Most Wanted. Really appreciate you being with us. I want to start here. Can you just, even though you've been on the show before, I want to make sure all of our listeners understand a little bit about the background of the Loss Prevention Research Council and the type of research you conduct around surveillance technology. Can you give us a little bit of an intro on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a criminologist at the University of Florida, research scientist, but that's a 24-year ordeal or adventure. But the Loss Prevention Research Council is a 25-year adventure. And we were founded by 10 major U.S. retailers, including Target and Walmart and the Home Depot, to name a few. And their idea was, look, they're dealing with theft, fraud, and violence every day and from every direction. Could we inject a little bit of science, a little research? And so they asked me to start an organization. And here we are, a quarter century later. We got 112 retail corporations and probably close to 300,000 stores that our members have and are operating out there. We have 161 technology companies, including LVT, which is a major partner of ours in all of our research endeavors. And so we've probably conducted over 500 research projects to date.
That's amazing stuff. In Washington, D.C., they recently declared a crime emergency due to escalating crime rates, just crime that was out of control. From your research, I wonder what you can tell us about what role surveillance technology plays in addressing these types of crime surges.
Sure, and I think let me just take an LVT platform if I could. It's mobile or it can be fixed, and it can do a few things, right? It can deter crime, and we've measured. In fact, we're working on our third large-scale field experiment called a randomized controlled trial. In this case in Detroit. But the first two RCTs that we did clearly indicated that there's a deterrent value to just having that technology there present. It's very visible. We put in ours, we leveraged the metal and put magnets to say police or sheriff very brightly. And of course we have red and blue or blue and just blue flashing strobes. So deterrence, right? The second thing is they can play a detection role, right? If you've got there's microphones, so you can have oral sensors for gunshots or metal banging or glass breaking or screaming or cries for help, things like that. Other detection sensors, of course, are visual. You might catch somebody with a weapon in their hand or detect that. You might detect somebody swinging their arms or harming somebody else or on the ground prone, things like that. So there's a detection role as well. And then there's a documentation role, right? They can document these incidents, document the people involved in those incidents, document any type of sensor you might have.
One of the more well-publicized events, I think, where we saw this play in was with the United Healthcare CEO, not that long ago, but not super recent, that showed, as an example, it showed how surveillance footage can help track down a suspect. I mean, we saw sort of the shot that everybody saw, but then law enforcement had a bunch of other angles and help track down the suspect. What makes modern surveillance systems more effective than older technologies?
Well, I mean, there's a few things. If you're talking about, let's say, whether it's detection or documentation, the resolution, right? The camera resolution is just so much better. It's much clearer pictures. There's day-night capability. And so there's that. It's going to enhance the detection. If you've got AI models, it's going to enhance the documentation regardless. I think that's part of it. There's a greater threat of consequences because you're going to be recognized, right? More likely to be recognized than before. Even your gait, how you walk, the clothes and shoes and hats that you wear. So I think that that the progression in technology is there. And the other part of this is networking these and integrating these technologies together with other technologies. And now it's not a matter of finding, it might be refinding somebody.
Fundamentally, it makes sense to me if you have people who understand that they're being watched, right? That their actions are being observed, that they're going to act better. But I would love to talk about the research. What does the data actually tell us about whether cameras deter crime in retail environments?
Well, I mean, it's somewhat mixed, but it's sort of like when people would ask my father or grandfather who are physicians, right? Do antibiotics work? Well, it depends. What bacteria do you have? If it's a virus, they're not going to work. If it's bacterial infection, they might work. Let's look at what it is, what strain. How much do we give? So dosing is huge, right? How much do we give? How often do we give it? How long do you dose, right? So the same thing with the technology. What does the technology look like? Can you easily spot it? We call that see it or notice it. And so we might put lights and other things on it to help find it. People are staring at their phones. They're not paying attention. They might be on the influence of God knows what. So they might be zoned out. So we got to help them see it. The next part is they got to recognize it. They got to get it, right? Oh, that's a camera. That could get me in trouble, right? And so we do things to amplify that perceived risk because they notice it and they recognize what it is. If they think a camera is a smoke detector, or they think a platform is a lighting rig for construction workers, they're probably not deterred by that, right? So it needs to be a clear and present danger in their mind at that time, right? And then they have to fear it, right? So it's got to be a credible, clear and present danger. So it's a see, get, fear play. But I think that the evidence is if it's clearly marked and they understand it, then it can play a deterrent role like we've seen now in 2 large-scale studies in the wild out there in the field. But if it looks like something else or it's hidden or it's not obvious, there's not a deterrent role very often in that.
We often hear about something called the displacement effect, which is essentially the idea that visible security measures don't actually prevent crime. They just relocate it. They move it somewhere else. And I think if you're the one putting up some kind of deterrent, then it moves it somewhere else. To a certain extent, you'd say, hey, mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned. But I wonder, what does your research indicate about this concern that it doesn't stop crime, it just moves it somewhere else?
So that's conditional too, right? Just like in the first case, deterrence is conditional, conditioned on this and this and this. Same thing with displacement or diffusion of benefits, right? So if you read the research literature, and we're supposed to sit around and read it, and we do. But if you look in the 70s, for example, there was this movement to say, well, nothing works. People are either good or bad, and they're either going to do it or not. So why do anything? But then there became, well, we got to do something. Well, if we do something, it's just going to push the problem. So there's been a lot of research on displacement. And what's come out of it is sometimes you can displace a crime or an offender in their crime in place, in time, in the technique or tactic that they use, and in the target even, right? You might displace them. But it's equally likely in many cases to the opposite. You might get a diffusion of benefit. Let's say you've got your platforms there, LVT platform, like we're researching in this place, and it's in a car dealership or something. And so a offender comes by, or a crew of offenders comes by, and they say, whoa, not this isn't the place. Man, they got all these cameras that are looking at us. And, it's talking to us and all these things, right? And there's a next car lot, and they might, well, that guy's probably got it too. So they get a diffusion of benefit, a halo effect. And this does happen quite a bit. And part of the reason too is that criminal offenders typically are committing a crime, harming somebody right there for a reason. And they may not have that same reason in another spot. So they may not displace, right? They may desist, or they may continue. But, and you've seen this with prostitution and all kind of studies where, I'm not going to the next block. I don't know anybody. They're going to hurt me there. There's something, right? So think about displacement and diffusion is counterbalancing. And it's, again, goes back to how do you dose? What's it look like? All these kind of things.
I'm going to get you out of here on this one. As you look ahead, what emerging surveillance technologies do you believe will have the biggest impact on retail crime prevention in the next 5 years?
Well, I think some of it, what we're trying to do is make it harder, increase the effort of the offender. There's continuing, it's the least desirable, right? You don't want it to be hard to get to a product. but the retailers are crime victims, and so they're having to choose from several options, and none of them are good. They all hurt business and they all cost money. So they're crime victims. They're having to play defense, not offense. So I think that there are increasingly better systems that will protect the item, but the customer can still self-access that. I think on the part of this is make it riskier, that more likely you'll be caught. That's kind of what we're doing. It's customer service, other surveillance type technologies are to make it riskier, or likely you'll be caught and maybe punished or sanctioned. And so I think some of the some new developments there are not just visual cues from the offenders, the characteristics of them, their bio features, but also their smart device emissions. It could be, other oral things about their vehicle, how it sounds, or whatever, their license plate, the AI model of their vehicle itself, if it doesn't have a plate, or both, right? So I think the future is tying together several of these visual, digital, and oral signatures more rapidly. And then the second part, I think, Marty, is fusing those to other sensors, other people and places, your partners as well, right? Other stores that might be at risk, law enforcement partners, your own team, but now fusing better information packets, if that makes sense, evidence packets.
Yeah, orchestration and coordination is going to be a big part of that.
I love it.
For sure. Dr. Reed Hayes, Director of the Loss Prevention and Research Council, we appreciate you taking some time on what I know has been a very busy day for you. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, that's it for this episode of Retail's Most Wanted. Thanks to our presenting sponsor, LVT. And don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button so you can catch each new episode. We drop a new one every 2 weeks. You can also find us on X, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. Thanks for being with us, everyone. And as always, keep up the good fight.